The second circumstance under Article 4, first paragraph, wherein the offender becomes criminally liable for the resulting felony, although different from that which he intended, is known as the error in persona or mistake in the identity. It is a situation wherein the offender directed a blow at the victim, whom he thought to be his intended victim. But the intended victim was not at the scene of the crime. He has mistaken the actual victim to be the intended victim. What is the effect of error in persona on the offender's criminal liability? It depends. Under Article 149 of the RPC, if by reason of error in persona, the intended felony is different from the felony actually committed, the lesser of the two penalties shall be the one imposed in its maximum period. So, in case of error in persona, if there is a variance between the intended felony and the felony actually committed, the lesser of the two penalties shall be the one imposed. Error in persona mitigates the criminal liability of an offender. But if there is no variance between the intended felony and the felony actually committed, error in persona has no effect on the criminal liability of an offender. So what if A and B are mortal enemies? During their last encounter, A warned B to make his last confession. A said, "I promise you, the year will not end with you still on earth." From then on, A cleaned his gun on a nightly basis. 4 months since then, A wanted to make good his promise to kill B. He wanted to execute his long desire to kill B. So A went to the place where B usually passes by, and A hid behind a big tree. Minutes later, a man passed by the said street. A, believing that man is B, A took out his pistol, aimed it at the man, and thereafter fired. A hit the man. When A went to the man whom he had hit and who was down on the ground, it was only then that A realized that man is not his intended victim B, that man is C. What crime, if any, did A commit? A is liable for the crime of murder. Based on the facts of the case, there was treachery because A hid himself behind the tree and waited for the man to pass, and thereafter took his aim and fired. It was an ambush. Obviously, absolutely, A deliberately intended on killing the said victim, leaving the said victim totally without any defense. This is a case of error in persona or mistake in the identity. Since it is a case of error in persona or mistake in the identity, the offender becomes criminally liable for the crime committed, although on a different victim. Since there is no variance between A's intended felony, murder, and the crime he actually committed, murder for killing C, the said offender becomes still criminally liable for the crime of murder, because in the case of error in persona, it carries the same penalty as if the said accused zeroes in on the intended. In case of error in persona, just because the victim was not the intended victim, it doesn't make the offender less criminally liable. In the case of People versus Sabalones, one of the Supreme Court's decided cases, the Supreme Court said mistake in the identity of the victim carries the same gravity as when the accused zeroes in on his intended victim. Therefore, the crime to be charged against A for killing C, although not his intended victim, would still be the crime of murder. What if A punched B in the course of a fight? B fell on the ground. While B was down on the ground, A kicked him a number of times in his stomach. B was in pain. X left. B, not knowing that A had left, B stood up, opened his balisong, and stabbed the man next to him, thinking that man was still A. B didn't know A has already left. The man that B stabbed is his very own father, because B thought that man was still A, not knowing A had left. The said father died. What crime is committed by A? Should A be penalized for the crime committed? In this case, B killed his very own father. Since B killed his very own father, B shall be prosecuted for the crime of parricide. However, since this is a case of error in persona, mistake in the identity, his intention was to kill A, but not knowing that A had already left the scene, he stabbed and killed his very own father. It is a case of error in persona. Since it is a case of error in persona, and since there is a variance between the intended felony, which is homicide, and the felony actually committed, which is parricide, error in persona will mitigate the criminal liability of B. Although B shall be convicted for the crime of parricide, the penalty to be imposed will be the lesser of the two. The lesser of the two, homicide versus parricide, is the penalty for homicide, which is reclusion temporal. Therefore, although the judge shall convict B of parricide for having killed his very own father, the penalty to be imposed will not be the penalty prescribed by law for parricide, but the penalty prescribed by law for homicide, the intended crime, because homicide has a lesser penalty than that of parricide. Applying Article 49. The last circumstance under Article 4, first paragraph, wherein the offender becomes criminally liable for the resulting felony, although different from that which he intended, is praeter intentionem. It is a situation wherein the offender directed the blow at his intended victim. The intended victim received the blow. However, the resulting felony is far greater than, which could have been foreseen, which could have been anticipated from the means employed by the offender. For praeter intentionem to lie in favor of the accused, the following elements must be present. First, that a felony has been committed. And second, that there is a notable disparity between the means employed by the offender and the resulting felony. That out of the means employed by the offender, out of the means employed by the offender, no one could have foreseen, no one could have anticipated the said resulting felony. What if the son didn't arrive home? The 9-year-old son did not arrive home that night. The 9-year-old son participated in the fluvial parade of Peña Francia. The father was mad. The son didn't arrive home. The following morning, the father told the mother, "You look for our son." When the mother came back, the boy was with her. The father, upon seeing the boy, repeatedly hit him with a piece of wood, with a stick. The stick broke. And so the father forcibly dragged his son to the forest, tied the body of his 9-year-old son to a tree, and then thereafter repeatedly hit or struck the son's body with a thick piece of wood. After several successive beatings, the father released the son. However, the son fell on the ground unconscious. The son died. The father is now being prosecuted for the crime of parricide. The father said, no, he cannot be liable for parricide because he loves his son. He has no intention to kill his son. Or, according to the father, if ever he is liable, he is entitled to praeter intentionem, a mitigating circumstance, because he has no intention to commit so grave a wrong as that of killing the son. Question: is the father liable of parricide in case of conviction Should he be given the benefit of praeter intentionem? In the case of People versus Sales, the Supreme Court said yes, the father is liable for the crime of parricide under the proximate cause doctrine. The act of the father tying the frail body of his 9-year-old son to a tree, and then thereafter repeatedly, successively hitting the body of the son with a thick piece of wood, is a felonious. It resulted to a felony, the death of the son, parricide. The said death of the son, parricide, is the direct, natural, and logical consequence of the father's felonious act of hitting him with a piece of wood. Hence, the father is liable of parricide under the proximate cause doctrine. Is he entitled to the mitigating circumstance of praeter intentionem, that he has no intention to commit so grave a wrong as that committed? No, the father is not entitled according to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said the second element of praeter intentionem is absent. There is no notable disparity between the means employed by the father and the resulting felony. If an adult repeatedly hit the frail body of a 9-year-old man, of a 9-year-old boy, with a thick piece of wood, definitely that would result. There is no notable disparity between the father's act of repeatedly hitting the frail body of the son while tied to a tree and the resulting felony, which is death. Hence, the said father is not entitled to praeter intentionem, a mitigating circumstance. So those are the three situations under Article 4, first paragraph, wherein the offender becomes criminally liable for the resulting felony, although different from that which he intended. So again, we have aberrasio or mistake in the blow, error in person or mistake in the identity, praeter intentionem, or when the consequence went beyond the intention. Under Article 4, second paragraph, criminal liability shall be incurred by any person performing an act which would have been an offense against persons or property were it not for the inherent impossibility of its accomplishment or on account of the employment of inadequate or ineffectual means. Article 4, second paragraph is known as the impossible crime doctrine. An impossible crime is one wherein the act done, had it been accomplished, would have amounted to a crime against persons or a crime against property. But it is not accomplished because of its inherent impossibility or because of the employment of inadequate or ineffectual means. The elements of an impossible crime under Article 4, second paragraph are first, that the act done, had it been accomplished, would have amounted to a crime against person or a crime against property. Second, the act was done with evil intent. Third, the act is not accomplished because of its inherent impossibility or because of the employment of inadequate or ineffectual means. And fourth, the act does not fall under any other provision of the revised penal code. Based on the first element, the act, had it been accomplished, would have amounted to a crime against persons or a crime against property. Therefore, an impossible crime will only lie if the act, had it been consummated, would have amounted to any of the crimes against persons under Title 8 of Book 2 or any of the crimes against property under Title 10 of Book 2. The third element provides that the act is not accomplished because of its inherent impossibility. In the case of Intod versus CA, the Supreme Court said there are two kinds of inherent impossibility. We have legal impossibility, and the other one is physical or factual impossibility. There is legal impossibility when all the intended acts, even if accomplished, would not amount to a crime. The example given by the Supreme Court, killing a dead person. Killing a dead person is an impossible crime. X had long wanted to kill Y. X found Y sleeping on a bench. X slowly went to Y and repeatedly stabbed him. However, unknown to X, Y had been dead 2 hours ago because of a heart attack. What crime is committed by X? X liable for an impossible crime of murder. The act done, had it been accomplished, would have amounted to murder, a crime against person. The act was done with evil intent to kill, but the act of murder did not consummate. The act did not consummate, was not accomplished because of its inherent impossibility. We have legal impossibility. Even if X performs all the elements of murder, murder will never be produced because the person that he stabbed to death is already dead. Hence, the crime committed is an impossible crime of murder. What is present is legal impossibility. The other kind of inherent impossibility is physical or factual impossibility. When all under the so-called physical or factual impossibility, extraneous circumstances unknown to the offender, beyond the control of the offender, prevented the consummation of the crime. X and Y were both seated in the jeepney. X looked at Y. Y seemed to be sleepy. Y was sleeping. In fact, Y was already snoring. And so X, wanting to take the things inside the bag, placed his hand inside the bag of Y. He was looking for anything to take, a cell phone, a wallet, whatever. But the bag of Y was empty. It has nothing inside. It is only a bag which doesn't contain anything inside. What crime is committed by X? X is liable for an impossible crime of theft, a crime against person. Here, the said act, had it been consummated, would have amounted to theft. The act was done with evil intent to gain. But the act is not accomplished because of its inherent impossibility. Extraneous circumstances beyond the control of X prevented the consummation of the crime. Unknown to him, there is nothing to take. The bag is empty. So, we have an impossible crime of theft. The last element requires that in case of an impossible crime, it is necessary that the act does not fall under any other provision of the revised penal. Last bar, 2024, there is a question on impossible crime. Question in the last bar, 2024 bar. X received Y in her house and told him to feel at home. Inside the house, Y planned to steal money from X. And X covertly got hold of the cell phone. And Y covertly got hold of the cell phone of X. Y tried to access X's electronic wallet account. After several attempts, Y successfully opened X's electronic wallet, but it has zero balance. Hence, Y returned the cell phone on top of the table and Y left disappointed. Question in the bar. What crime, if any, is committed by Y? Answer. Y is liable for an impossible crime of theft. All the elements are present. First, the act, had it been accomplished, would have amounted to theft, a crime against person. The act was done with evil intent to gain, intent to steal the money from the electronic wallet account of X. But the act of theft is not accomplished because of its inherent impossibility. We have physical or factual impossibility. Extraneous circumstances beyond the control of Y prevented the consummation of the crime. Unknown to Y, the electronic wallet of X has zero balance. The said act does not fall under any other provision of the RPC. Hence, the crime committed is an impossible crime of theft. X and his cohorts wanted to kill Y. They went to the house of Y. They peppered with bullets the house of Y, intending to kill Y, but the house was empty. Y was in another town. X and his cohorts were arrested, and they were charged with a crime of attempted murder. Are they liable as charged? No, they are not liable as charged. In the case of Intod versus CA, the Supreme Court said the crime committed is an impossible crime of murder. All the elements of an impossible crime are present. First, the act, had it been accomplished, would have amounted to murder, a crime against persons under Title 8. The act was done with evil intent to kill. Why? The act is not accomplished because of its inherent impossibility, and that is physical impossibility. Unknown to X and his cohorts, Y is not inside the house. Under any and all circumstances, Y could not have been killed because she is in another place. And last element, the act does not fall under any other provision of the RPC. So the Supreme Court, in the case of Intod versus CA, convicted the accused of an impossible crime of murder. A previous bar problem. X arrived home. He was shocked. X saw his own wife in actual sexual intercourse with another man. X left the house banging the door. The following day, X, with the help of a lawyer, filed a complaint for adultery under Article 333, Book 2 of the RPC, against the wife and the paramour of the wife. The Office of the Public Prosecutor sent subpoena to the wife and the paramour to file their counter affidavit. In the counter affidavit of the wife, she moved for the dismissal of the case. The wife said, adultery will not lie against her because under Article 333, adultery is a crime committed by a married woman who shall have sexual intercourse with another man not being her husband. Article 333 is specific. The offender is a married woman. The wife stated in the counter affidavit, she was not born woman. She was not born a female. She was born male, but she went to Singapore and had sex change. And attached to his counter affidavit were all the medical certificate, medical documents showing the sex change. She was born man, she was born male, she only had sex change. Hence, she moves for the dismissal of the case. Instead of dismissing the case, the Office of the Public Prosecutor filed against the said woman, against the said wife and the paramour, the crime of an impossible crime of adultery. Question in the bar. Is the charge correct? Answer, no, the charge is not correct. The charge is wrong. The first element of an impossible crime, the act, had it been accomplished, would have amounted to a crime against persons or a crime against property. An impossible crime will only lie in cases under Title 8, Crimes Against Persons, and Title 10, Crimes Against Property. The crime of adultery is under Title 11. It is a crime against chastity. Therefore, there can never be an impossible crime of adultery because adultery is a crime against chastity. X, kidnap Y. X wanted to extort ransom from the parents of Y. So X brought Y in his hideout. When X was about to call the parents of Y to ask for ransom, the police suddenly arrived, arrested X, and thereafter rescued Y. Based on the narration of the events, the Office of the Public Prosecutor filed against X a crime of an impossible crime of kidnapping for ransom because ransom has not been paid. And so, the crime charge is an impossible crime of kidnapping for ransom. Question? Is the third charge, impossible crime of kidnapping for ransom, correct? Answer, no. The charge of impossible crime of kidnapping for ransom is wrong. The first element of an impossible crime under Article 4, second paragraph is immediately absent. Again, the first element, the act, had it been accomplished, would have amounted to a crime against persons or a crime against property. In this case, the crime is kidnapping for ransom. Kidnapping for ransom is not a crime against person. It is not a crime against property. It is a crime against personal liberty and security under Title 9. Therefore, the first element of an impossible crime is immediately absent. Besides, in case of kidnapping for ransom, the crime is consummated the moment the victim was kidnapped with the intent to extort ransom. Article 267, kidnapping and serious illegal detention, does not require that ransom be paid. It suffices that the intent of the offender is to extort ransom from the relative of the said victim. It is already kidnapping for ransom. There is no need that ransom be paid. Under Article 6, there are 3 stages in the commission of a felony. We have the attempted stage, the frustrated stage, and the consummated stage. A felony is attempted when the offender commences the commission of a felony directly by overt acts and does not perform all the acts of execution that should produce the felony by reason of some cause or accident other than his own spontaneous desistance. On the other hand, a felony is frustrated when the offender has already performed all the acts of execution that would produce the felony as a consequence, but which nevertheless do not produce it by reason of causes independent of the will of the perpetrator. How is an attempted felony different from a frustrated felony? In an attempted felony, the offender merely commences the commission of a felony. In a frustrated felony, the offender has already performed all the acts of execution. Nothing more is left to be done. Second distinction, in an attempted felony, the felony was not produced by reason of some cause or accident other than the offender's spontaneous desistance. In a frustrated felony, the felony was not produced by reason of causes independent of the will of the perpetrator. And lastly, in case of an attempted felony, the offender was in the subjective phase of committing the felony. The offender still has control over his acts, whether to proceed or to desist. If he desisted, he is not liable. In a frustrated felony, the offender is already in the objective phase of committing the felony. He has no more control over his acts. So those are the distinctions: attempted felony versus frustrated felony. X wanted to rob the house of Y. So X, in the middle of the night, where there were no people, made an opening on the wall of the house of Y. So he made an opening sufficient for him to enter. After making an opening on the wall of the house of Y, X was about to enter. However, before he was able to enter, the barangay tanod of the area passed by and they apprehended X. They caught X in the act of trying to enter the house of Y through the opening that X had created. Because of this, X is charged with attempted robbery. Is the charge correct? The charge is wrong. Of what crime will you convict X if you are the judge? If you are the judge, you have to convict X of attempted trespass to dwelling. As held by the Supreme Court in the case of Lamahang versus People, the act of making an opening on the wall, trying to enter, is not an overt act directly connected to robbery. Rather, it is only an overt act directly connected to trespassing. The said act of making an opening on the wall is only directly connected to the act of entering, the act of trespassing, but not to the act of robbery. Hence, the said accused should only be convicted of attempted trespass dwelling and not attempted robbery, even if that is the crime that he has in mind. Because his overt act of making an opening on the wall is not directly connected to robbery, only to trespassing. X was fast asleep when suddenly he was awakened. And upon opening his eyes, he was shocked. A man was on top of her, and the man was pressing a cloth soaked with chemicals on her face. X with all her force and might, struggled. He kicked the man. The man, afraid that he would be recognized, jumped outside the window. Later, the man was identified. The man was a former suitor of X, whom X turned down. And so X filed against the said man by the name of Y, the crime of attempted rape. Is the man liable for attempted rape? In the case of Valeros Jr. versus People, the Supreme Court said no. So the issue is the act of pressing a cloth soaked with chemicals on the face of a woman an overt act directly connected to rape? Supreme Court said no. The act of the man pressing a cloth soaked with chemicals on the face of the said woman shows that the intent of the man was to make the woman unconscious. But once the woman is already unconscious, the said man can do any other act. The man can rape the woman, the man can kill the woman, the man can touch the private parts of the woman, the man can rob the woman, the man can do any other thing, not necessarily to rape the woman hence. The said act of pressing a cloth soaked with chemicals on the face of the woman is not directly connected to rape. The man cannot be convicted of attempted rape. In this case of Valeros Jr. versus People, the Supreme Court said the crime committed by Valeros is unjust vexation. Because obviously, the act of the man annoyed, irritated, vexed the said. In both cases of Lamahang versus People and Valeros Jr. versus People, the Supreme Court said that the act of Lamahang making an opening on the wall in order to enter, the act of Valeros Jr. pressing a cloth soaked with chemicals on the face of Malu, the victim, these are considered as indeterminate offense. An indeterminate offense is one wherein the intent of the offender in relation to the overt act done is ambiguous. But we have no such crime as indeterminate offense. Therefore, both accused cannot be charged with indeterminate offense because indeterminate offense has no juridical standpoint in the revised code. So in the case of Lamahang, the Supreme Court convicted the accused of attempted trespass to dwelling. In the case of Valeros Jr. versus People, the Supreme Court convicted the accused of unjust vexation, a form of light coercion under Article 287. What if X and Y were fighting? In the course of the said fight, X pulled out his gun. With intent to kill, he aimed the gun at Y and fired. However, Y evaded the blow. Y evaded the shot. Y was able to run away and left. What crime is committed by X? X is liable for attempted homicide. The act of X, aiming the gun at Y, firing the gun, these are overt acts directly connected to homicide. However, homicide was not consummated by reason of a cause, by reason of accident, other than X spontaneous resistance, and that is because Y was able to evade the blow, to evade the shot, and run away. Therefore, the crime committed is attempted homicide. Same problem. X and Y were fighting. X, it was only an exchange of fist blows, but X pulled out his gun, aimed it at Y, and fired with intent to kill. Y was hit on the shoulder. Y was brought to the hospital. The doctor said the wound on the shoulder is non-fatal. It would heal within a period of 10 days. What crime is committed by X? X liable for attempted homicide. X act, pulling the gun, aiming the gun at Y, firing with intent to kill. These are overt acts directly connected to homicide. However, homicide was not produced because the injury he inflicted on Y is a non-fatal wound. Therefore, a non-fatal wound will not bring about death. Hence, the crime committed is attempted homicide. But what if the same problem, X, in the course of a fist fight with Y, pulled out his gun, aimed the gun at Y with intent to kill. He fired the gun. Y was hit in the chest. Y was brought to the hospital. Doctor said an operation must be done. The life of Y is 50-50. If the operation is not done, he might die anytime. The operation was done, Y survived. What crime is committed by X? X is liable for frustrated homicide. When X fired at Y with intent to kill, hitting Y in the chest, the wound that was produced was a fatal wound. Such fatal wound on the chest is sufficient to bring about death, but death didn't supervene because of immediate medical intervention. Hence, the crime committed is in the frustrated stage. It is frustrated homicide. In a number of cases, in the case of People versus Labiaga, in the case of People versus Trinidad, in the case of Quijano versus People, and other similar cases, the Supreme Court said, in case of intentional killing, parricide, murder, homicide, infanticide, in order to bring about the frustrated stage, it is necessary that the wounds inflicted by the accused on the victim is a fatal wound sufficient to bring about death, but death did not supervene because of immediate medical intervention, a cause independent of the will of the perpetrator. If the wound inflicted by the accused on the victim is a non-fatal wound, it is only in the attempted stage. Because if the wound inflicted by the accused on the victim is a non-fatal wound, the said accused has not yet performed all the acts of execution so as to produce the felony. What if X is a physician? Dr. X, is in an illicit relationship with a nurse in the hospital. So Dr. X wanted to kill his wife so that he would be able to live happily with the nurse. Dr. X wanted to get rid of his wife. And so what Dr. X did, he gave his wife food with poison. After eating the food with poison, the wife became unconscious. Dr. X, bothered by his conscience, immediately administered to his wife a medicine that will counteract the effects of the poison that he placed in the food of the wife. Because of this medicine that he administered to his wife, the wife survived. The wife was saved. Dr. H is now being prosecuted for the crime of frustrated parricide. Question: is Dr. H liable as charged? Is Dr. H liable of frustrated parricide? Answer: no. Dr. H is not liable for frustrated parricide. In a frustrated felony, the offender performs all the acts of execution which would produce the felony as a consequence, but which nevertheless do not produce it by reason of causes independent of the will of the perpetrator. So in a frustrated felony, the reason for the non-consummation of the crime is a cause independent of the will of the perpetrator. In this case, although Dr. H has already performed all the acts of execution to kill his wife, when she placed poison on the food of the wife, gave the food to the wife, and the wife ate the food, all the acts of execution has already been accomplished. However, parricide was not produced because of the medicine that Dr. H himself administered. Therefore, in this case, parricide did not result due to a cause that depended upon the voluntary will of Dr. H. Hence, he is not liable for frustrated parricide because the reason for the non-consummation of the crime is his very own voluntary will. For frustrated stage to arise, it is necessary that the reason for the non-consummation of the crime is a cause independent of the will of the perpetrator. So what is the criminal liability of Dr. H? Dr. H will be liable for physical injuries depending on the time that the wife needed medical intervention. If the wife needed medical intervention for more than 30 days, Dr. H will be liable for serious physical injuries. If the wife needed medical intervention for 10 to 30 days, Dr. H will be prosecuted for less serious physical injuries. If the wife needed medical intervention only for 1 to 9 days, Dr. H will be charged with slight physical injuries. What if X went to the grocery store in SM North EDSA? X took Tide detergents. X and his cohorts, his companions, took all these Tide detergents and placed it in their grocery cart. Thereafter, they went out. They tried to stop a taxi. When the taxi stopped, they were about to board these boxes and boxes of Tide Ultramatic. However, the guard of SM took notice of them. And the guard of SM went to X and his cohorts and told them, "Can I see the receipt?" But they could not show any proof of payment. They could not show any receipt. And so they were brought to the admin department. It was discovered they did not pay for the said boxes and boxes of Tide Ultramat. Because of this, X and his cohorts were charged with a crime of theft, consummated theft. The RTC convicted them as charged. On appeal, the defense raised by the accused was that if ever they are liable, it should only be for frustrated theft. It is only for frustrated theft because they have not yet left the SM department store. They had already taken it, but they were only about to board it to the taxi. Therefore, it is only in the frustrated stage. Is the argument of X and his cohorts correct? No. In the 2007 Enbang case of Valenzuela versus People, the Supreme Court said there is no such crime as frustrated theft. Theft admits only two stages: the attempted stage, attempted theft, and the consummated stage, consummated theft. There is no frustrated theft because according to the Supreme Court, under Article 308, theft is the unlawful taking of the personal property of another with intent to gain without the consent of the owner, without violence against or intimidation of persons or use of force upon things. Supreme Court said, the only operative act necessary to consummate the crime of theft is the unlawful taking of the personal property of another. Once the offender has taken the personal property of another, once the offender has already gained possession of the personal property of another, theft is already in the consummated stage. The carting away, the disposal of the said property is not necessary. It is not necessary that the said property be brought outside, that the said property be disposed of. It suffices that the offender has already gained possession of the personal property of the offended party. In this case, X and his cohorts had already taken the said boxes of Tide Ultramatic from the grocery store and placed it in their cart. Even if they were not able to dispose it and place it inside the taxi, the mere fact that they had already taken it from the grocery store, theft is already in the consummated stage. So there is no such crime as frustrated theft. Another crime which has no frustrated stage is the crime of rape. It is settled in the case of People versus Orita, in the case of People versus Kampuhan and Bank, in the case of People versus Pareha, that there is no such crime as frustrated rape. Rape is consummated by the slightest penetration of the said man's penis into the vagina of the said man. Rape is already in the consummated stage. There's no frustrated stage in the crime of rape. So rape only admits two stages. We have attempted rape and we have consummated rape. And it is settled that rape is consummated by the slightest penile penetration of the woman's vagina. But what does the phrase slightest penile penetration mean? In the case of People versus Efren Agaw and Bank 2022, the Supreme Court clarified the meaning of slightest penile penetration. In the case of People versus Efren Agaw and Bank, the Supreme Court said, when you say slightest penile penetration, when jurisprudence takes slightest penile penetration, it means that the penis has already touched the vulval cleft or the pudendal cleft of the labia majora of the victim's vagina. It is necessary that the penis has already reached the vulval cleft or the pudendal cleft of the labia majora of the victim's vagina. Therefore, a mere grazing by the penis of that fleshy portion of the vagina, which is not the vulval cleft, not the pudendal cleft of the labia majora, it is only attempted rape. So again, according to the Supreme Court, when you say slightest penile penetration, it means the penis has touched the vulval cleft or the pudendal cleft of the labia majora of the said offended party's vagina. That is the genital contact threshold that constitutes consummated rape. A mere touching of the outer surface of the vagina, that part which becomes hairy during puberty, is only attempted rape. How is rape distinguished from acts of lasciviousness? When do you know that the said man would be liable, that the said offender will be liable for attempted rape or acts of lasciviousness? In the case of People versus Christopher Pareja, in the case of Cruz versus People, the Supreme Court said, the distinguishing factor between attempted rape and acts of lasciviousness is the intent on the part of the offender to penetrate. If the offender has the intent to penetrate the woman, but was not consummated, then the crime committed is attempted rape. But if based on the acts of the said man, there was no intent to penetrate the said woman, the crime is acts of lasciviousness. The girl was inside her bedroom. The man entered the bedroom. He undressed the girl, undressed himself, placed himself on top of the girl. The girl was crying and crying, afraid that the cries of the girl will be heard. The said man covered themselves with blanket. However, when the man covered themselves with blanket, the cries of the girl even became louder, afraid that he will be discovered. The man left the room. The man is prosecuted for the crime of rape. Supreme Court said the crime is attempted rape. The crime is attempted rape and not rape because there was no showing based on the testimony of the said girl that the said man's penis penetrated the vulval cleft or the pudendal cleft of the said girl's labia majora. Based on the testimony of the girl, the man's erect penis merely touched the outer surface. Therefore, it is evident there was intent to penetrate. Hence, the crime committed is attempted rape. In another case, the helper was awakened. Her employer, the master, was on top of her. She slept with clothes. Now, she is totally naked. She struggled. She kicked the employer and she was able to get out of the room. Went to the police. A case of attempted rape was filed against the employer. Is the said employer liable for the crime of attempted rape? In the case of Cruz versus People, the Supreme Court said the employer is liable only for acts of lasciviousness. Based on the testimony of the girl, she slept. She was awakened. The employer was already on top of her. She was already naked. The employer was touching her private parts, her vagina, her breast. The employer was smashing her breast. Therefore, according to the Supreme Court, there was no showing that there was intent to penetrate. Supreme Court said in the case of Cruz versus People, the mere of a man of climbing on top of a naked woman, absent any evidence of his erect penis, necessary to penetrate the said woman, would only amount to acts of lasciviousness and not the crime of attempted rape. In this case, the Supreme Court said, based on the testimony of the girl, there was no showing that the man's erect penis is ready to penetrate her vagina. Hence, because of that, Supreme Court said, absent any showing of intent to penetrate, the crime committed is not attempted rape, but acts of lasciviousness. We go to Article 8, we have conspiracy. There is, under Article 8, a conspiracy exists when two or more persons come to an agreement concerning the commission of a felony and they decide to commit it. There is proposal to commit a felony when a person who has decided to commit a felony proposes its execution to some other person. Conspiracy and proposal to commit a felony, as a rule, are not punishable acts, because conspiracy and proposal to commit a felony are mere preparatory acts. Hence, they are not punishable acts as a rule. However, under Article 8, conspiracy and proposal to commit a felony become crimes by themselves when the law especially provides a penalty therefor. So the moment it is the law itself that provides a penalty for conspiracy, that provides a penalty for proposal to commit a felony, they become crimes by themselves. So, we have two concepts of conspiracy. We have conspiracy as a means of committing a felony and conspiracy as a crime by itself. When conspiracy is a crime by itself, the mere act of entering into an agreement, the mere act of having a conspiracy will make the conspirators already criminally liable. A, B, C, D, and E met, planned, and agreed to stage a public uprising in order to overthrow the present administration. Someone overheard their plan. Someone overheard their agreement. The police arrived. A, B, C, D, and E were arrested. They were charged with conspiracy to commit rebellion. Will the case prosper? Yes, the case will prosper. Because conspiracy to commit rebellion is a crime by itself, punished under Title II and punished under Book 2 of the RPC. But what if A, B, C, D, and E met, planned, and agreed while they were in a restaurant to kill W? The waiter overheard their agreement, their conspiracy to kill W. The waiter reported to the police. The police arrived. The police arrested A, B, C, D, and E. And they were charged with conspiracy to commit murder. Will the case prosper? No, the case will not prosper. Because there is no such crime as conspiracy to commit murder. It is a mere preparatory act. In order to bring about criminal liability, there must be at least an attempt to kill for it to become attempted murder. But a mere planning, a mere conspiracy, a mere agreement to kill someone, there is no such crime as conspiracy to commit murder. In this case, conspiracy is only a means of committing a felony, which is merely a preparatory act. When conspiracy is only a means of committing a felony, we have two kinds. We have direct or express conspiracy, and the other one is implied or inferred conspiracy. There is direct or express conspiracy when the conspirators met, planned, and agreed to commit a crime. Direct or express conspiracy is a conspiracy based on a preconceived agreement. In case of direct or express conspiracy, the moment any one of them performs the crime agreed upon, all of them becomes criminally liable for the said crime agreed upon, because they were all authors, part of the conspiracy. Hence, they're all criminally liable except when they did not appear at the scene of the crime. Exception to the exception, he did not appear at the scene of the crime, but he is the principal by inducement. He still becomes liable. Or, even if he appears at the scene of the crime, he prevented the others from consummating the crime. In that case, although he was part of the conspiracy, he will not become criminally liable because he prevented the others from consummating the crime. That is direct or express conspiracy, a conspiracy which is based on a preconceived plan. The other one is implied or inferred conspiracy. Implied or inferred conspiracy is a conspiracy which is deduced from the mode and manner of committing the crime. In implied or inferred conspiracy, the conspirators, in case of implied or inferred conspiracy, the conspiracy established through the acts done by the offender in the commission of the crime. The said conspirators must have acted simultaneously based on a synchronized agreement, which shows that they have the same criminal intent. They have the same criminal purpose. In case of implied or inferred conspiracy, there is no previous agreement to the commission of the crime. The conspiracy was established at the spur of the moment based on the acts done by the offender. It may happen that they do not know each other, but based on the acts they performed, it is revealed they have the same criminal intent. Hence, a conspiracy was established impulsively at the spur of the moment. The moment conspiracy is established, whether it is direct or express conspiracy, or implied or inferred conspiracy, the act of one is the act of all. The act of one is the act of all. It simply means that the moment conspiracy is established, all perpetrators are punished to the same extent, regardless of the quantity and quality of their participation in the commission of the crime. The moment conspiracy is established, the act of one is the act of all. It is not important to determine who inflicted the fatal blow, who performed a minor act, since conspiracy is established, regardless of the quantity and quality of their participation, all of them will be imposed with the same penalty. They will have the same criminal liability. What if the police station got a report that there is a shabu session ongoing in the house of Y. And so because of this, the police officers formed a team of 3 police officers. The said 3 police officers A, B, and C, went to the house of Y. When they arrived at the house of Y, the door of the house was open. From the outside, police officers A, B, and C saw 3 men, X, Y, and Z, engaged in sniffing shabu. And so the said 3 police officers A, B, and C announced, "We are here, we are police officers, we are going to enter, and you will be arrested." So they announced their arrival. After announcing their arrival, the owner of the house, Y, suddenly shut the door. He closed the door. The moment the door was closed, police officers A and B entered the door. When police officers A and B entered the door, suddenly X fired on police officers A and B. Police officers A and B fell on the floor lifeless. Police officer C also entered the door. The moment police officer C entered the door, X also fired at police officers. Police officer C was hit with a fatal wound, but he was still breathing. Z told X, "Tapusin mo na." But before X was able to fire that fatal shot, other police officers arrived, and X, Y, and Z were all arrested. X, Y, and Z are now charged as conspirators for 2 counts of murder for having killed the two police officers and one count of frustrated murder for the injuries sustained by the third police officer C. But Y&Z said, no, we are not liable, according to Y&Z. It was only X who fired the shot. We have no gunpowder in our hands. We did not fire a single shot. It was only X who should be charged for the death of the police officers. We are not his co-conspirators. Is the argument of Y&Z meritorious? Or are Y&Z co-conspirators of X in the killing of the two police officers and in fatally wounding the third police officer? In the case of People versus Carandang, Milan, and Chua, the Supreme Court held the accused criminally liable as conspirators for the death of the said two police officers and for the fatal wound inflicted on the third police officer. Supreme Court said what we have here is a direct or express conspiracy. The moment the police arrived, why close the door? Why close the door? Upon closing the door, when the police officers entered, that gave X the opportunity to fire in ambush on the two police officers entering. And Z told X to finish the third police officer. Obviously, according to the Supreme Court, the said accused planned the killing of the police officer. That is why the said door was closed. Hence, the Supreme Court convicted Carandang, Milan, and Chua in the problem X, Y, and Z as co-conspirators for 2 counts of murder, and the other one is 1 count of frustrated. That is a case of direct or express conspiracy.